Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Well, it has been quite a weekend. There have been several occurrences that have turned into all-out attacks against conservatives. And I'm going to discuss two of those things today because these things are confirming my worst fears, and it's something that we really need to discuss. And I'm going to admit I'm a little livid. No, I'm a lot livid, so I need to get it out of my system. So yeah, today we're going to talk about hashtag expose Christian schools, Hslda, and Russia. Because you know what? I smell desperation. You know, when I say that I smell desperation, it might seem a little funny, but to be quite honest, we as homeschoolers should really be worried about the state that our country is in right now. We have now become a targeted attack by the leftists. Yes. And again, I've said all the time that I don't really like to talk too much about left and right because I know that we're programmed to think these ways. We are programmed to think of left and right. But that is literally what we're going through. So even though I know this is something that is artificial and has been put on us so that we are at odds with each other all the time, you cannot deny the fact where this is coming from. So, Saturday, I received a few messages on Instagram from some friends who had asked if I saw an article that was being presented as the very top headline on Google. And I had not seen it because I don't go to Google for news. I know how leftist they are, so I just refuse to even give them the time of day when it comes to news. But I followed the link that they sent me, and what it is a website called Think Project, and I will include the link down below if you want to go read this for yourself. And they are basically accusing Hslda of having nefarious ties to Russia. Are you kidding me? Now, for those of you who don't know what Hslda is, I'm assuming that most of you do. If you are homeschoolers, most of us will know. Hslda stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Hslda is the agency that many of us homeschoolers turn to and become members of so that we can have protection in case we have any sorts of legal issues with our school districts or our states or anything homeschooling related. That is why we follow Hslda. Now, Hslda has been branching out and has been trying to help with homeschooling in other parts of the world because, yes, homeschooling is becoming more popular elsewhere. And so what happened was they took a trip to Russia. And this article is making it sound like this. It almost makes it sound like Hslda is trying to help Russia infiltrate homeschoolers and create spies and other alt-right right-wingers. It's just, I'm getting worked up, and I told myself I wasn't going to. So slow down, Shelly. All right. So anyway, one of the funny things about this article is that there are a lot of funny things about this article, I have to say. Funny, but sad and scary at the same time. But anyway, one of the things that I'm going to talk about is that this article said that Hslda did not make this trip to Russia public. They were like very private about it and didn't tell people. Well, no, that's not really the case. Hslda tweeted about it, and they made a video and put it on their YouTube channel. So there goes that idea right out the window. Okay. Another thing that I have to point out is that this article used sources that are blatantly leftist, that are blatantly anti-Christian, anti-conservative, and yet they're presenting these sources as being neutral. as being trustworthy. And these two sources are the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which, again, they try to make it sound like they're neutral. But in all honesty, if you are on the right, if you are a conservative group, you have a very, very high likelihood of being labeled as a hate group by this group. Okay? They're not neutral. And then on the other hand, they turned to my favorite homeschooling group, the Coalition for Responsible Homeschooling, which I have talked about in a few videos before. It may sound like they're for homeschooling and they're really in support of homeschooling. They're not. That name is just to throw you off, because what they are really for is for the state to have more control over children. They don't want parents to have rights over their children. They want the state to have more control. And they try to make it sound like they're doing this for the kids, and they want to make sure the kids are homeschooled properly. That's not why they're doing it. They have an obvious vendetta. And if you would ever visit their website, it is very, very apparent that this is true. So anyway, those two sources already just completely discredit the entire article for me, because I can already see what angle this is being written from. And the thing is that I have been saying for quite a while that I would love to see homeschooling continue to grow and grow and grow. And yes, I'm even trying to help that to happen by encouraging other parents to do it. But I have said to friends, and I might have even mentioned it here, that I am afraid that we are going to get to a point that there will be such a large population of homeschoolers. Whew, that scared me. The wind is like really windy and my door just slammed shut. Anyway, but I'm so afraid that we're just going to get to this high population of homeschoolers that the government is going to get antsy, because they no longer have that control over those students who are not in public schools. And we all know my thoughts on public education. If you don't, I'll include some links below that really explain to you why public schools are there in the first place. They're not there to educate. There's a little hint. So I'm not going to get into that today. I want to focus on these. But again, if you want to know more about that, I'll leave those links down below too. But here's the thing. This is what's happening. These people are scared. They know that they are losing their grip, because they cannot keep this insane narrative that they have going. They cannot keep it if they are losing more and more people. Because let's face it, if children are not being raised to be learning this insanity in school, if children are being raised, and I'm talking about homeschooling too, to be able to think for themselves, to have critical thinking skills, they are going to have a really hard time with some of the things that they are trying to do. And I have said that all along, and this article to me proves that, yeah, they're getting desperate. Because think about it. Yes, homeschooling is on the rise. And I think at this point, there's probably between 2.5 and 3 million homeschoolers in the United States. And while those numbers are really encouraging, compared to the public education students, we homeschoolers are like a drop in the bucket. We're not very much. Why are they so worried about it? Why are they bringing up Hslda? Now, let me just explain that celebrities visit countries that hate us all the time. And the media barely bats an eye. I remember when Beyonce and Jay-Z went to Cuba to celebrate their 5-year wedding anniversary. Now, mind you, Americans are not supposed to be spending money in Cuba. But this article, Google, in fact, because they put it top headline, they have a problem with a homeschool group traveling to Russia to encourage homeschooling families there, because homeschooling is on the rise and they are trying to encourage them, give them the resources that they need to do it. It is about homeschooling. There is nothing nefarious. We are not training our children to be neo-Nazis. We want to give our children the best education that we can. We feel that it is our responsibility to educate our children. And this insane narrative coming from this article that we far-right homeschoolers would have any other purpose is ridiculous. And you know, I am a member of HSLDA, and I can tell you that I have never gotten any Russia propaganda from HSLDA, because they send out newsletters, they send things in the mail. You know, I have never gotten any sort of propaganda. So again, why are they so concerned about this? Why are they bringing this up? I cannot help but think that this is just another step to them getting our children. And you know, years ago you might have thought that I was being, you know, completely paranoid about that. And you know, some people might think that I'm being completely paranoid about it now. Although, if you are paying attention to the things that are actually going on in the world today, going on in our country, yes, the state wants control of our children. That was the whole reason they had compulsory schooling to begin with. They wanted control of the children. They needed to be able to shape the future of our country to look the way that they wanted it to, the way that would be the most lucrative for them. And as homeschooling grows, they're losing that. They want our children. If you've ever read Brave New World, think of Brave New World. They're looking to a point in time where parents are no longer raising their own children. And if you think that I am again, like going off the deep end, thinking this, no, there have been people who have been proposing that the state have control over children. And you know, I even have to point out that one of the masterminds behind Common Core, there are actually videos of him basically talking about how it is his hope that one day public schools, because you know, public schools offer, a lot of public schools offer free breakfast to children. It is his hope that one day public schools will offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner to families and make it more of a community center. And what he would ultimately hope for is for public schools to become boarding schools for those children who might not have a better place to go. Who would determine that? Who would determine if these kids needed to be in this boarding school? You need to think about these things. And even if you are homeschooling and don't have your kids in public school, I hate to say it, but we are not guaranteed that we are always going to have this right. And that is another reason that they are so against HSLDA. Because HSLDA has been instrumental in helping our state laws to not be completely insane. If it were not for them, we would have so much more regulation than we already do, that no one would want to homeschool because it would be too difficult. So yes, that is another reason, because HSLDA has been fighting for us homeschoolers to have the rights to educate our own children without being completely over-regulated, which I have to say that I think that some states are still too over-regulated, but I can only imagine how much worse it would be if HSLDA were not there to help us. So this is something that I really wanted to go over with you guys today. Who cares if HSLDA went to Russia? Really, who cares? They're helping homeschooling families. You know, not everything in the world, it has an ulterior motive. You know, okay, now I think that with some people, like, you know, with the media, yeah, they always have an ulterior motive, and I'll say that right away. But for the average citizen, we really want to do what's best for our family, and we really want to help people who want to have lifestyles that are similar to ours, to the things that we believe in. So yeah, we want to step out there and we want to help others. So that is one thing that I really want to point out. And I think there is a message that we have to get out there to these media companies who are spreading this leftist propaganda. And here is that message. Russia is not the boogeyman. You, the media companies, are the boogeyman. So, moving on. Next, I'm going to talk about the hashtag Expose Christian Schools trend on Twitter. This is something else that I came across yesterday. The way that I actually knew about it, because I don't really, when I go on Twitter, I usually don't look at trends and those sorts of things. I just tweet a couple things and then I'm off. I don't spend a lot of time on it. This was another thing that I came across on Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Instagram more than anything. But I came across this on Instagram too, that somebody mentioned that there was an Expose Christian Schools trend on Twitter. And they were trying to get people to go over there and do an Expose Public Schools trend. And so I went over and checked it out. Sure enough, there is an Expose Christian Schools trend going on on Twitter. And happily, what I want to tell you is that now yesterday, like the first time that I checked, the Expose Christian Schools thread, it had like several hundred tweets. And the Exposed Public School ones was still relatively new, so there were like 30 or 40 tweets for that. Today when I checked, there are more Exposed Public Schools tweets than there are Exposed Christian Schools tweets. So thank you to everybody who has been contributing to that hashtag, because this is another insane thing. Expose Christian schools? Now, let me tell you that I'm not gullible. I know that not all Christian schools are fantastic. I realize this. But I think we need to point out the elephant in the room. The real problem are the public schools. Yes, it is the public schools where you are constantly hearing about, well, okay, the propaganda again. I have to say it. It's that propaganda that is being drilled into these kids' heads. And it's not just political propaganda. They are teaching these kids that there is no difference between, that there's no right and wrong. You know, it's just basically whatever you want to do. Or as, Aleister Crowley, that fantastic Satanist, you know, said, do as thou wilt. That is basically what they're teaching in school, in public schools nowadays. So they're teaching kids, just do whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And, you know, you've got all of this political propaganda going on at school, not to mention the sexual relationships between teachers and students, the violence, the school shootings, the fact that there have to be school resource officers, police officers in the schools because the violence is so bad and they are so unsafe. Metal detectors in the schools. Teachers being assaulted by students. Students being assaulted by teachers. The list goes on and on and on, not to mention the fact that critical thinking is gone. There is no more critical thinking in the public school system. It is all about memorization, spitting out what we told you. No, you can't have any thoughts of your own. If you disagree with us, we'll give you a bad grade. This is what is going on in public schools. So for me to see that for some reason, I'm still not sure why the Exposed Christian Schools hashtag was even started, and I honestly don't care, because when I saw it, I just thought to myself, really? So here is just another tactic against conservatives. And yeah, I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that they don't want kids in these Christian schools. They don't want kids being taught that there is right and wrong. They don't want kids being told the truth about God and Jesus. And they most certainly do not want kids who are taught any sort of critical thinking. Because again, that goes against everything that, you know, the powers that be behind the public education system believe in. They don't want that. So here you go, you know, you've got not only homeschoolers, homeschooling is growing, so you've already got homeschoolers who are out of the public school system and thus are not being exposed to that social engineering experiment, but now you also have even more students in Christian schools. There are more students in Christian school than there are homeschoolers. So this is an even bigger group, again, that is out of the public education system and thus not a part of that social engineering experiment, and they are not being taught the narratives that, of course, the people behind school want kids to learn. And you know, I just have to also point out that I have said before, now you know that Rockefeller was huge behind starting the compulsory schooling because he needed people to work in his factories, and that was just one reason. He really did want to create mindless citizens who were easy to control and who had to depend on consumerism because they no longer had skills to do things on their own. They were taken out of the schools, or not out of the schools, they were taken out of their home where they were learning useful skills. They were learning how to be self-sufficient at home. They took them out of the home, started teaching them things that they were never going to need in life. All they needed to train them to do was to be able to work in that factory and to buy. That is what it was about. And you know, I have often said that compulsory schooling, the institution of that led to women's lib. And women's lib, yes, that is when the family started to fall apart. And I was watching an interview the other day on YouTube, and sure enough, on the interview, I wish I could remember who it was that I was watching, but he basically said that Rockefeller also orchestrated women's lib for two reasons. Two reasons that Rockefeller funded women's liberation, the women's lib movement. Two reasons. First, because at that point in time, they could only tax 50% of the population. They wanted to be able to tax more than that. The second reason, they wanted the children. They wanted the children to be in school earlier. If mothers are out of the home, they're going to be more willing to give their kids up earlier to the school system because that's where it all started. That's where these kids were trained. So I just really needed to bring these things up to all of you because I know that some of you don't follow the news, and I don't blame you. I don't follow mainstream media anymore, you know, for reasons like this. The only reason that I knew about either of them was just because I was told by other people on Instagram. And I was sent the link again because I don't ever go to Google for news, and this is one of the reasons why. So anyway, I just want you all to be aware that they're going to come for us. That's all there is to it. They're getting desperate. They don't like that they don't have their grips on our children, and they're going to do whatever they can to change that. So I hate to end it on like such a sour note, but what we need to do is we need to rise up. We need to start speaking out. You know, stop, don't just read these things and shake your head and then go on and start doing something else. We need to start doing something about it because that is how we have gotten to this point. We have been silent for too long. It's time to speak up. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, sometimes rants, sometimes not, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work, you can support me on Patreon. I'll leave the link also for you in the description box. And I hope you have a great day.